Of course, I was muted. Good afternoon, everyone. One, I know that Annabelle is going to be a few moments late, but in the interest of time, I can go ahead and get started so that we can be sure that we get you all out on time and get through some of everybody's questions, any questions you all may have at the end. So first, I'd like to introduce myself. This is Don't Reinvent the Wheel, how to capitalize on existing momentum. Because one, I know all of you have a ton of time that you can do things all day long over and over. And so that you really could do this, right? All day. But I know a lot of us don't have a ton of time. So one, we're going to talk about being able to use other people's the work other people have already started. Because I can assure you somebody's already doing the great work, building on the great work you've already done. All right. So So here's my, official like background. I am a native of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I have been here my entire life. I am the youngest of seven kids. Um, there was a Brady Bunch going on until I came in and broke it up, and kind of we stayed there towards the end. All right, I live off a diet of hot wings and crawfish if it wouldn't kill me. I got my bachelor's from Southern University in 2009 in psychology, followed by my master's at LSU in public administration in 2011. And then last time ever, I went to LSU again for my PhD in higher education administration. So one, you will never catch me going back to school for anything. I played a joke with my family and told them I would go to law school. And I was like, there's no way there's anything else left for you to go to school with. So one, what I want you all, I'm going to tell you something personal about me. Well, I'm going to tell you four personal things about me. Let's start with the first one. There are two things. Oh, these are out of order, so I'll go back. So I'm still upset about two things. One of them is that Our Kind of People got canceled before only after one season. They left us with a cliffhanger, kind of like the Dallas thing, but we don't know who shot her. The other thing is that I still think that the refs rigged the game, 2002 Western Conference Finals. I'm still mad about that. Yes, I was a Kings fan growing up, currently a Warriors fan. And now I'll back up and tell you about the things I'm kind of happy about. Two of my favorite new shows, Abbott Elementary and American Auto. These are my little bits of joy because sometimes the work we do gets very weighty, gets very heavy. Sometimes it feels like we're not seeing the difference we want to see, but these are two things that bring me joy and laughter all throughout. Right. And so if you're like me, sometimes you want to like, I need an outline, I need something, I need to know what I'm walking into. So this I'm not gonna give you much, but this will, kind of help you a little bit. We'll go through some background information, which we did a little bit of, some learning objectives, some theory, some different realms we'll talk about, and then some programming, and then we'll have time for Q&A. But if you all would be so kind, if you could drop your name and your institution or whatever department, whatever sphere you work in the chat, that would be great. So I can kind of see who's in the room. I've shared some of my, most intimate secrets with you all. The fact that I love American Auto and Abbott Elementary, and that I'm still mad about a game that happened 21 years ago. Yes, I still am. So if you could drop your name and your institution or your departments in the chat, I would love to learn a little bit more about you all. So I'll give you a second to do that. Let's not be shy. You can drop your info anytime throughout the chat, your name, institution, whatever department you work in. Or if you have any questions, feel free to send those and we can take them throughout or we can hold them to the end. So some background about me is that our office, the office I work in at the Louisiana Board of Regents, we initially started in 1998 at LSU. And it was due to the hazing and binge drinking related death of a student by the name of Benjamin Wynn through a night of fraternity, pledging, things of that sort, and he died. Very high blood alcohol content, and LSU participated in the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation's Matter of Degree program, which gave money to 10 campuses to focus on environmental strategies to reduce binge drinking rates near campus and around campus. So that's where we saw the creation of things like LSU Late Night to do direct counter programming to high risk binge drinking times. And so after that funding ran out, our state Department of Health said, well, we'll continue to fund you all if you all expand those kind of activities focusing on environmental strategies with other campuses around the state. So that was we were able to still keep going. This is the same office iteration of our office that has evolved since 1998 all the way to 2023, where we are currently at the Louisiana Board of Regents. Um, so we have a statewide coalition, which I'll talk about in a second, which is very similar to IHEC. We're LAHEC, we like to be original in these. We're LAHEC. But one of those things is that by us being at the Board of Regents, we are the only statewide coalition that focuses on prevention and higher education that is headquartered at a governing body for higher ed. And that definitely comes into play with how we're able to get different things done, especially environmental strategies or policy wise, because of the place where we're currently situated, especially when it comes to the lock zone. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. So our office, like I said, we've evolved since 1998 when we first started. I'm not even going to tell you all of those initials, but we have two distinct focuses. So when our office was picked up, so let me back up. In 2017, we saw the death of Maxwell Gruber at LSU, which was a very similar circumstances to Benjamin Wynn. Our governor realized at that time that there was nothing at the state board for higher education that focused on prevention, hazing, those types of things at our board of regents. So we were voluntold that we would be moving in 3 months to the board of regents. They picked our entire office and our suite of programming up and moved us to the board of regents. So we were at LSU, our statewide focus. We were the Louisiana Center addressing substance use in collegiate communities, the LaCassu office, which we still do a lot of our statewide work under. And so in there, we sit on the state epidemiology work group, the prevention systems committee, and a Hope Council. And all three of those sub groups all make recommendations to the governor's drug policy board, which informs policy. We bring the higher ed stats in perspective to laws and things when our state is looking to make laws. So one very interesting piece for us is that we have a seat at the table. So as our state last legislative session was discussing removing fentanyl testing strips from the drug paraphernalia criminal code in our state, that was absolutely something that I was able to bring to the table and say, yeah, we definitely have to look at removing it. I know there's a harm reduction piece yet, but one, we have college students, colleges that are asking about that. Another example is that we have a Good Samaritan law here for people who call report students who have either where the overdose or if it's alcohol poisoning. And so one of the things the way our law was written is that if the police respond to a certain address a number of times, it would then go off into some type of criminal component. But I'm like, hey, higher education here. We have Greek students that all live in the same house. That would be the same address if there were multiple instances. So being able to highlight those types of things, sitting on these statewide policy councils, being able to bring that to their attention to make sure that the laws are doing what the spirit of the law, we're carrying that out without having trying to mitigate any unintended consequences for our college campuses. And so for our campus focus, this is our version of IHEC, which is LAHEC. And so we do research and evaluation. Our state administers the core alcohol and drug survey. It's free to any institution that wants to participate. So at our board of regents, we oversee 4 public systems. We have our regional college system, which is the University of Louisiana system. We have our flagship system, which is Louisiana State University system. We have our technical and community college, which is Louisiana Community and Technical College system. And then we have our Southern University system, which is the only historically Black college and university system in the country. And so everything we do, our Board of Regents coordinates activities for those 4 boards, but we also have a private association of 10 institutions, Louisiana Association of Independent Colleges and Universities. And those are all private religiously affiliated institutions. So before we were at the Board of Regents, I mentioned we were at LSU. We are funded by the Louisiana Department of Health, and we service everybody. We service any institution that wants to work with us, and I am a big proponent of, I will ask for money until you tell me no, and I'm probably still gonna ask. So everything we do, we provide for our campuses is free. We have webinars similar to this. Some of the same activities that IHEC does for you all, we provide all services to our institutions for free. Whether they're public, private, 4-year, 2-year, historically Black college universities, which we have 6 of, and we just celebrated our HBCU Day at the Capitol on yesterday. So a couple of quick learning objectives. Going to pause there for a second before we jump in a little further. Does anyone have any questions before we go any further about our background, about our structure, how we're kind of situated? Because that kind of is able to inform the work that we do. And if you're not at one of those places, we could talk about how you can make a friend at one of those places. All right. So we'll have three takeaways from today. One, I definitely want to be sure that you all understand the importance of campus communities, coalitions, and mutual support. I think the key part is mutual support. Being from the college perspective, sometimes, and I'm also the liaison with our local and regional behavioral health offices, is that sometimes we'll hear from our community partners that we want the college to come do this. I'm like, it has to be mutually beneficial. It's not just them doing something for you. It has to be a give and take on both sides of the coin there. Learning how critical overdose education can be, especially with the increase of fake pills. And tragically, I'll share a story of why some of our campuses are moving a little bit faster on that than others. And then learning how to utilize existing policies to support expansion of naloxone access. Because we know there's some pushback with harm reduction that's not I think even as a field, that's something our higher education realm is just getting comfortable with, even our country, with the words harm reduction. And what does that look like? And what does that mean? Okay, so we're going to jump into a little bit of background theory, everybody's favorite part. Um, I won't bore you with theory all day. I promise you we'll get to the good part in a few minutes. But this, the socio-ecological model was pioneered by Dr. Yuri Brofenbrenner at Cornell University. And even though this seems like a very easy to connect the dots idea, kind of like very second nature, second thought, this was transformational at the time because Dr. Brofenbrenner said it's not that one thing singularly influences our behavior or how a person's, whether they're nurtured or the development, it's a multi-connected system and they all influence each other. It was so much of a big deal that at the time, Cornell changed the name of their College of Home Economics to the College of Human Ecology based on his seminal work in 1979, all the work that he was able to do around this. And so we've seen tons of these. You all have probably seen this in multiple colors, variations, shapes, linear, all those kinds of things. But basically, it looks at the level of relationships and organization and spheres that we all work in the different realms. So for higher ed, what I've noticed is that we tend to focus on these when we look at students. The individual students, some of their friends they hang out with, different organizational and social clubs on campus. But today we're actually going to talk about the public policy piece and the community piece and how we can utilize those to leverage things like naloxone access on our campuses. And I've mentioned that you've probably seen that picture before, and a lot of institutions, organizations, and agencies have built upon Brofenbrenner's 1979 work, including the CDC, where their model enables community engaged partners a comprehensive list. One, because their belief is that all of the violence, all of the negative outcomes we see on the other end, it starts with prevention on the front end. If we can come up with a way to prevent some of these things, to change some of the systems, the policies, the structural piece, we will prevent violence and other negative occurrences on the back end. And so this is what the CDC came up with for their social ecological model framework for prevention. And again, it's very similar to what Brofenbrenner's original design looked like. And again, we would fall here in higher education, focusing on the individual and relationship. And sometimes we don't do as great a job focusing on the societal and the community. And so when we focus on just the individuals and the relationships, sometimes it gets very bogged down. It gets very hard to realize that it's not just us doing this work, that it's not just the people at Eastern Illinois University. It's not just you solo in your office by yourself, the only person in the world that is trying to help keep college students safe from alcohol and drug use. You're not the only person. And it's not even just the state of Illinois that's doing that. Like if you start to work within your coalition, like it's just us. No, it's multiple. It's not just you. There are like 30 other coalitions who are also working on this. Multiple agencies, federal. There's organizations like Face the Nation. There's the Higher Education Center at the Ohio State. There's Rich Lucy, who I know spoke with y'all. Dolores Shamini, who spoke with y'all. There are multiple people all across the country, and you even got a friend in Louisiana, right here. This girl that's working on being able to help do this work with you, that we're not all in this alone. and that sometimes it gets heavy, but we can always phone a friend. And so we are definitely all in this together. And that I just want to say this explicitly: you do not have to solve this by yourself. That is an impossible ask for any one person to feel like they have the weight of the world on their shoulders to solve this. But we can all chip away at it, working together piece by piece. And so we'll talk about a couple of the realms I mentioned earlier. The first two will be public policy and societal. And so this is a meeting back at the Office of National Drug Control Policy. This was part of that program. We were on a panel for naloxone availability and access models on campuses. So during our program, I had met a person at the table before, like through email, but we got a chance to meet. So this person is Dr. Lucas Hill. Lucas is phenomenal. That's like the best way I can describe it. He's really phenomenal. We'll talk a little bit more about him in the coming up, especially when we talk about phoning a friend. So one, we know that this conversation has been raised to a national level, especially with the increase in fentanyl-laced drugs all across the country. So for us in Louisiana, that conversation about naloxone looked a little different. Is that we started to notice that there was interest from our higher education system, some of our presidents of our systems, and then from our Department of Health, where their mission was to decrease the amount of overdoses we were having, no matter where they were occurring, and to get naloxone in as many places as humanly possible that you can place a naloxone kit. They would like to put one there. And you know me, I have no money, no problem asking for money, and I definitely ask for some money to help them with their mission, because it has to be the give and take. They want to get naloxone everywhere. I want to put naloxone everywhere. So now as a woman, I have no problem spending money. So there's that. And so for us, another piece was happening at the time is that we had bipartisan, bicameral Republicans, Democrats, independents in our state, everybody looking to do something on opioids. And I know that we live in a very, very politically charged, politically hostile environment. But the one thing that I found is that opioids tend to be an issue where people were able to come together without much tension. And so I am very realistic. I know some people may not say this outright, but I feel like we have to educate and practice and provide and support students in the actual reality of where we live. So I'm in Louisiana. I am in a deep red southern state with the only Democratic governor in the South. And so that makes for and he's a moderate Democrat, he's centrist, and it makes for some very interesting dealings with how our state operates on certain issues. But this was one everybody came together on. There was no political landmine attached to that. So sometimes we get so caught up in the big fray of what we see in the media, what we see on TV. But when you stop to have conversations with people, a lot of times you can find common ground where you can sensibly work together to get some things done. Because our goal, even though we can't do this alone, our goal is singularly to make sure that our students are safe. And so I think that's something that any group of people can rally around together. And so I mentioned we had involvement from all of our system presidents, all 4 presidents of our systems, our public education system, and the executive director for the LICU system. They were all on board, and they were excellent in lending their staff, their expertise to us, being able to help get some things done. Because when you're crafting, and I'll talk about the policy we crafted in a little bit, but when you're crafting a policy, so here's the key part about me being at the Board of Regents. Quick question. So let me do a quick check-in. Drop your favorite song, one of your favorite songs in any genre, just drop it in the chat. You can drop a favorite song in the chat. The thing is, when you drop them in the chat, there's a really, really good chance that no 2 people will say the same song. Because and then there's some things that you will probably never convince somebody to think that you like. Some people, it's just hard to get a lot of people to come together on the exact same thing. But if we can come together and we can work through it. So instead of me trying to convince Annabelle that Another Brick in the Wall by Pink Floyd is a horrible song. So instead of trying to use it as a song, which like trying to convince her, it's easier for me to just pass a policy or say the best song in the world is Single Ladies by Beyonce. I could just pass a policy and say that. The thing is, with environmental strategies, you change behavior a lot faster and with the entire population, with more people than trying to individually convince people to change their mind. And so these presidents were absolutely amazing in supplying their staff to us. And I'll talk about the policy we crafted together. So when I mentioned earlier about phoning a friend, I literally phoned a friend because Lucas Hill was phenomenal. And so when we looked at our legislature, initially wanted to pass something through our legislature to require campuses to have naloxone on campus to do something about opioids. That was literally the gist. I showed you four lawmakers, and they all had four different ideas, and it was like, do something. And so this is where you can leverage your expertise. When people want to get something done and you have the expertise and you, let's be honest, you like, I probably am the most likely person to be able to help you carry out your goal. Our office stepped up and said, hey, well, we brought our partner, the Department of Health, to the table and said, hey, we actually already have a grant with the Board of Regents. They work and do prevention work with all the colleges. Instead of you all passing a law, we think it would be more amenable to the systems. If you all let us pass a policy, we'll provide them funding, the campuses will get training, they'll get all of this for free, and then you all won't have to pass a law with no money attached to it, because who doesn't love unfunded mandates, right? And so that was our pitch to them, and they allowed us to do a policy. But I had never, so that was my first foray into policy. I had never written policy before. Because remember, I was at LSU and we just kind of did programmatic things. And so I called Dr. Lucas Hill. I was like, Lucas, I have no idea where to start doing this policy. But the really great thing is he was able to point me to Operation Naloxone, that the UT at Austin, their College of Pharmacy, a great program that they were running that had model language, that had sample policies. He's now working with the Texas Targeted Opioid Response, doing a ton of work all over Texas in opioid stuff. And so I got a lot of good information from him. I literally got the draft for our policy from Lucas Hill. And so I didn't just stop there because, again, when you don't know something, it's going to take a bit of research. Like I was researching all the states that had policies that required them, which states did not. I literally was calling friends all over the country. Heather in Connecticut was amazing, sharing their policy. Dr. Amelia Area in Maryland sharing their policy, but one seeing where, okay, what will work for me? What would work here in Louisiana? Because what works in Texas, what works in Illinois, what may work in Maryland or Connecticut may not work here. And I think that's part of that. I know Rich Lucy talks about that when you borrow things from people, being able to, yes, make them keep the fidelity of them, but you have to adapt them to where they're relevant to your population. And so there's an old saying, eat the meat, spit out the bones. So take what you can and leave the rest. And so that led to our Board of Regents opioid education, training, and reporting policies. And this was a labor of love over lunch, because I did feed the people who, as we worked on our policies, because we did get a little bit of pushback. But one, the way that we overcome the pushback, that mutual support, is like we can help you. And not only we have a couple of our schools that have medical schools, we can provide additional naloxone and training and opportunities to be trainers for your pharmacy students, for your students that are in the medical programs, that they were able to go out to the community and do training, get some additional expertise, some of those things. And so we sent out our draft policy. I am very big on intentional collaboration, because nobody likes just having an additional policy on top of everything else you do shoved down their throat. And so we sent out our draft policy to all four of our systems in our private association. And we said, send this to the right people on your campuses, let them mark it up, tear it up completely, and give us their feedback. And so when I got the feedback from 40 campuses of what they loved, hated, didn't like, was confused by, all of that, me and the 5 representatives I had, we all sat down, we grouped the feedback and went through it line by line, and we addressed every single issue. One of the big issues, and what things I see that I get questions about all the time from across the country, is how did you deal with the risk management component? And I'll talk about that in just a second, because it's a risky thing. Institutions, they're there to educate students, but their general counsels are sure to be sure that they're not liable for anything in the meantime as well. And so all the free naloxone that we get on our campuses is paid for by the Louisiana Department of Health. And then it's also, we gave out the initial round, but when campuses get additional naloxone, when they switch it out, whether they used it or they it expired, they get new naloxone, they get it from their regional behavioral health office to reinforce that campus community coalition because they all come to Baton Rouge where I am annually for a summit, but they go back home. And in the even years when I go to their areas and meet with their campus community coalitions to do training, I come back home. It's important for them to be connected and reinforce the connection between their local community resources when I'm not there, because nothing we do can rise and fall on the shoulders of us alone. So yes, you can be a connector, but be sure to connect people in the way that when you remove yourself or you have to step away, that they can continue and the relationship isn't just centered around you. And so some are three components, campus-wide awareness programs and so we gave broad enough categories where schools are able to adapt that and fit it in a way that makes sense for them. A lot of our institutions utilize Generation RX, which I'll talk about in a little bit, because I love the fact that that was the route we chose because of the fact that it focuses on a couple of different things. Um, the next piece was training, and this is the key how we got around the risk management piece. The next piece, so for us, we have a decline to administer clause in there. And so what we required is that we have certain categories of people that must be trained. So that's like campus law enforcement, those who live in Greek housing, health, wellness, counseling center staff, athletic trainers. Um, the thing is, RAs are another big group that we have to be trained. You can decline to administer. You cannot decline to be trained because we know that once someone gets into an emergency situation, when your adrenaline gets to going, we have no idea what your flight or flight will do. And we would hate for someone to say, I was in a situation, but if I had known, then I would have done it. The SAFE project, their son, that was the issue that happened. There was naloxone in the room, and the roommate didn't know how to administer it. And so for us, for risk management, that's the compromise because we were intentional about hearing from our institutions is that we're not out to get you, we're not out to do any of that, but we do want to work to keep each other safe. So our compromise was they have to agree to be trained. So once they agree to be trained, that way they have all the required training, should they decide to administer or not. But even if they do administer or do not administer, they have to call emergency medical services. That is the way that we make sure that we keep the chain of safety going. Right. And our next part, and I was intentional about this piece because I personally love paperwork. I do. But I know a lot of people don't. And so we made a very short reporting form. They have to report to our office if there's an naloxone administration on their campus. They have to report it to their management board within 72 hours. There's a little short form that collects demographics, no personal student identification information, but it collects demographics on race, approximate age or classification, I believe it is, and like location of campus. Was it in a residence hall? Was it in the library? Was it in the student union? It collects residents. And then if we have a quarterly report. If there were 0 administrations, they have to say there were 0 administrations. And part of that is designed to help us keep up with if a kit was used and where we need to replace a kit. So our next 2 rounds we'll talk about are the community and organizational rounds. This is back, I shared that meeting was in October 2019 with the Office of National Drug Control Policy. This was us one of my colleagues hosting a training with the Southern University Police Department back in 2019. When I mentioned about things being mutually beneficial, we sponsored this training because the Southern University Chief of Police reached out to our office and said, we really need some training on naloxone and we don't have access to the kits. I connected them with our local regional behavioral health office. Like, we're looking for more people to offer training to. It's as simple as that. They were happy to go train. Southern Police Department was happy to show up. And because I have money, I paid for everything and I bought them lunch. I do believe in feeding people, so that's something you should know. If I ever invite you to something, I will feed you. Blame it on my South Louisiana. but being able to make sure that you're connecting the people who need the resources with the people who have the resources, and explaining and educating our populace all over across our campus who all needs education. So, like at one of our campuses, we had an entire Greek chapter train all of their members. They brought in the Student Health Center to train all of their members. We paid for free naloxone, so all of them had access to a kit. Just being able to connect the resources where they're needed. And for our regional trainings, this was in 2020, right before COVID shut us down. These were all hosted in all regions across our state, but they're hosted by our regional behavioral health office. In that region, the regional health office, they host a training. They invite all of the necessary community partners. I invite all the higher education partners. We did naloxone administration trainings. We gave out kits. We provided food. We went through other relevant data and things at that training, but it reinforces connection. So when that's an opportunity for the campus to meet the community people that are there serving in their community, and for the community to meet the campus. Because when I left Lake Charles, Shreveport, Baton Rouge, Monroe, when I left all those areas, those people still have to work together to keep our students safe. And so it's an excellent way getting out of our offices to one go and help someone else. And so these are our regions where we typically have, there's 10 regions on this map. We normally do 9 trainings. So if you see in the bottom right corner where it says JPHSA and MHSD, that is Jefferson Parish Human Services and Authority, and then Metropolitan Human Services. Instead of doing 2 there, we actually do 1 big New Orleans training because we actually don't have any schools physically located in Jefferson. But we know that our students, they travel back and forth, and a lot of times they don't know what parish they live in when it comes to New Orleans. That is just a very real thing, especially with us having so many colleges there, and 2 huge liberal arts colleges that draw in a ton of out of state students, with that being Tulane University and Loyola University. So are there any questions before we move on to some of the programming initiatives? Feel free to drop those into the chat. If anyone has any questions, I'll give you a second. All right, so we'll keep moving. So one of the things that I think most people on this call may be aware of is that when college students tend to misuse prescription drugs, it's typically not opioids. It's typically stimulants, which I think no one on this call would probably be surprised by, but it's typically stimulants. And so with that, this is from the College Prescription Drug Study from the Ohio State University, and this has been consistent for several years. And even our statewide core survey data, it shows the same thing. We have no institution, region, or from our statewide results since 2007 where we have ever had students report more opioid use than stimulant use, not in a single college, region, or at the statewide level. For us, stimulants tend to be the drug of choice for college students. All right, and so this is why I mentioned that when we were doing our trainings across the state, we were utilizing Generation RX, which focuses on these key messages. But a part of why I really, really like Generation RX, one, not just that it's free because I paid for really nice, colorful manuals we had printed, but it focuses not only on opioid misuse, but also on stimulant misuse. So things like Adderall, Vyvanse, Ritalin, all of those type things, it focuses on those in the college, in the university module, university toolkit. They have it segmented by population, but for higher ed, it specifically focuses on opioids and stimulants, recognizing that stimulants is more of the issue for college students. And so we were able to already be sharing that message starting 2, 3 years ago that, okay, stimulants are dangerous, misuse of stimulants is dangerous, and how to counter some of that. And I know that you all had Rich Lucy who talked about the DEA's 1 pill can kill. And then I know he probably mentioned that it's not a scare tactic. It's just scary because not all pills are real. And the DEA has released multiple public threat alerts that they went from 4 in every 10 pills to 6 in every 10 pills being laced with fentanyl. And that sometimes what our students are thinking that they're buying pills to study, to whatever recreational use that they're looking for, Xanax or anything like that, that they're not the real pills. And unfortunately, it does not take much fentanyl for a student to pass away, for someone to pass away from it. And unfortunately, that's what happened at one of our institutions. This young lady, John Therese Broussard, I believe it was Halloween weekend, right around Halloween. They went out, she and some friends, a couple weeks before her 21st birthday. She took what she thought was Adderall, and it was not. It was a fake pill that was laced. And so with that, her and one of the reasons why I really point this out, um, um, there, if you search her name on the internet, I would tell you, like our state computers is blocked now, TikTok is blocked. But there's a TikTok that her family did. She wanted to be a influencer, and her family did a TikTok at her memorial service, and it had millions of views because they said she wanted to be, and that was their way of making her famous, getting her to be famous. And sadly, she lost her life taking what she thought was a real pill. A similar incident happened at the Ohio State last year. I believe it was a year or two ago, where three sorority students took what they thought were pills to help them study, and they were laced pills. So being sure, so now where college higher ed kind of felt like we were insulated from the opioid thing, the opioid crisis in a sense, because college students don't tend to use opioids as much as the general population. With the increase of fake pills, all of that goes out the window because literally anything can be laced at this point. And so being sure, and if it's laced with fentanyl, there's only one thing that's going to stop that, and that is the presence of naloxone. And so and having that administered. So one, being able to educate our campus community, our campus stakeholders and administration on what that looks like, the importance of having that. And so um, that student she was a student at the University of Louisiana at Lafayette, and this is how they celebrated International Overdose Awareness Day last year in memory of her and other people that they have lost in their community. And so that first picture on the left with the purple flags, that represents a life for overdoses in that community that year. And then on the right hand side, you see the opioid overdose kit. Those were kits that they had us order. We ordered, they were just, it's like basically like a little plain box, and they put those signs on them. We ordered 200 boxes for them. We got them 200 kits to place all over their campus. And one of the things is they're one of our largest regional institutions. It is the central portion of that city. And so in Louisiana, we have a ton of festivals. And there's a ton of festivals, a ton of foot traffic that comes through that campus. And one of the things they were very intentional about, you may see this kit inside the building, but they also place some strategically on outside the building. Where like we don't want it to be where it's like when there's a festival or something like that, the campus is a central place where kind of everybody goes downtown. It's like we don't want something to happen and people cannot get access to the care that they need. And so again, sometimes tragedy makes us react faster than just our goodwill. But this school is definitely taking on more initiative, and we have some of our other schools. One of our other institutions, one of their sister schools, Southeastern Louisiana University, which is home to the first collegiate recovery program in the state of Louisiana. They also did. They gave away free Narcan. They did some additional training. They've had Dan, forgot Dan's last name, the guy from the pharmacist from Netflix, that happened near that area, the area in Louisiana where they are. He came and spoke to their students, but being proactive, doing a lot of education, explaining that not every, that unless you get a pill from a trusted pharmacist, that there's no way you can guarantee what is in that pill, and being able to educate our campus community on that. And so, I'm getting ready to wrap up. There are a couple things to remind you, and so we'll have some time for some questions at the end. Three quick reminders. One, research. If you're looking to get something like naloxone on your campus, I would say, when I say research at this point, do your Googles. One, just look at what other states are doing. Whether your state has a standing order for naloxone. Now the FDA has approved it for I was like, Louisiana, we're not usually first in a lot of stuff, but we were ahead of the curve on the standing order for naloxone here. When I say research, continue to look to see what other schools near you are doing, what other agencies are doing, what other organizations. So one of the things that we were able to do in our educating our stakeholders was to lean on the documentation of others. And so for me, that looked like pulling documents from SAMHSA, from our Louisiana Department of Health, especially our Louisiana Department of Health, who already had a stated mission and a roadmap for getting naloxone everywhere. And I was like, see, I didn't pull this idea out of thin air. This is something that some really smart people who were paid a lot of money already came up with. This is just me helping them meet their goals so that we can reduce opioid overdose deaths in our community. And so being able to leverage other people's missions and visions. And another piece of that, we have a master plan here in Louisiana, a master plan for higher education, where our goal is to, by 2030, increase the number of working age adults with high value credentials to 60%. And so part of that is making sure that we have safe, affirming environments for our students, those who may have alcohol or drug issues, expanding collegiate recovery, making sure that we have an naloxone available, saying we want to get more people into campus, make sure they're successful all the way through, providing those things like collegiate recovery, those types of support that they need to be successful so they can get those high value credentials and become contributing taxpayers in our state. And then collaborate. Phone a friend, call whoever you have to. You literally can call me. I'm pretty sure Annabelle will give you my information if you ask her, and I'll have it on the next slide and a slide or two. But also, it's not just me. Dr. Lucas Hill is phenomenal. He is extremely helpful. And I can drop his information to Annabelle when I send her the slides for this. But also, there are other people who are more than willing to help you create policies, craft policies. And I'll say one thing that was very influential for us is reaching out to your border region. So the reason why I say I was able to do that because I am the person at the border regions who gets to make that decision. But when I talk with other statewide coalition, they're like, we've never engaged our border regions. We never talked to them. And before our office moved here to the border regions in 2018, I had been at LSU for 8 years in my office and had absolutely never talked to the border regions before. I just didn't see how our work was able to fit in. But now I tell the story that keeping students safe, because we know that there is a strong connection. If you ever gone to NASPA strategies, there is a strong four-track connection between alcohol and drug prevention, mental health and wellness, sexual violence prevention, and health promotion that is very closely tied together. I'm like working with all of those pieces, that is how we help reach our master plan goals. And then the last thing I want to encourage you to do is to share. Whenever you do something great, whenever you got a great template, be sure to share with other people. Because after we wrap up today, when I send Annabelle the slides, I'm also going to send her the copy of our policy and the link to our current training. And the reason why I say current training, because we're actually in the process of getting our training updated. We have a video training that we provide to all of our institutions that they're able to load into their learning management system. So whether that's Moodle, a Blackboard, a Canvas, so they can assign it to the people that need to be trained annually. We're actually updating that because I had to record it on the fly right when COVID happened. And so now we're getting a whole interactive thing going on. And then once that's done, I can also send that to Annabelle as well. That'll probably be in another month or two when we get that. But with that, I will wrap it. I will pause for any questions that you all may have.
So with this, you guys should be able to type in the question section and then I can help moderate with that.
So I saw that there were no questions. Unless someone has one dying question, I will turn it over to Annabelle and thank you all for your time and your engagement on today. Thank you.
I am not seeing that, but thank you. I'm sorry I came in a little late, had something come up. I was glad to pop in. I do have a question. So it looks like one of our attendees, Juan, was asking who the person in Texas would be. Do you know, like who like the IHEC or, main person would be down there?
Yep,
Yes,
I
we will
seeing that
share.
there were no questions, I will turn it over back to Annabelle and she can take it from here.
Oh, can you hear us? All right, so I don't know if things are going through or not. All right. Well, thank you everybody for attending today. We will send copies of the presentation out, and then I'll be sending I will send out, anything related to the presentation, whether that is, you know, a slideshow, we'll send out surveys, things like that. If you have any questions, you are more than welcome to reach out to me. My email, let's see, I will put that. Thank you. All right. You guys will have my email, so if you guys need anything, you can let me know. And we can stay in touch. Also, the good resource as well is if you go onto our website, that is where we will post any recorded webinars. We will put links for past trainings, upcoming events, things like that. The thing to note is that most like our in-person events, those are mainly for our Illinois affiliates. I know that Ches or NCheck posts our events to their website, and that's where some of that goes through. But like I said, if you guys have any questions, let us know. And we thank you for coming today.